Andy Nowicki, altrightnovelist.com. It struck me today, things just strike me sometimes, out of the blue, apropos of nothing. I just spend a lot of my time in thought, and even when I'm supposed to be doing something else, I'm often just, my mind is just wandering. I guess you could say it's a type of daydreaming, except I'm not fantasizing about being in some mystical world and beating the bad guys and destroying the Death Star or anything like that. I'm just thinking about things, this, that, the other. And it's where I spend at least, let's say out of, if I say 18 hours of the day awake, 16 to 18 hours of the day are awake, I would say I spend 10 or 11 of those hours in this kind of thought. It's just how I am. It's how I've developed for whatever reason. And the thought that struck me today, sometimes these thoughts are, not of a whole lot of worth. But sometimes I think, oh, that's something good. I better make that into a Facebook post or something. And sometimes I do. But this one, I thought, this thought is so interesting, I think I'll make a video out of it. Not just a Facebook post, but an actual video. And that's kind of putting pressure on myself now, because if it turns out that this thought is kind of lame, then you'll say, oh, what? That's something you thought was more valuable than a Facebook post? You should have stuck to maybe making this a Facebook post, man. That's what you'd be thinking. That's what you will be thinking. Maybe in a second, if this thought doesn't impress you. But here's my thought. I was actually alive in the 1980s. The 80s spanned a range of time and a range of moods for me. I was very happy at the opening of the 80s as a child. I was a 9-year-old kid in 1980, and I was having a blast. I was having a ball. And then as things moved along into the 80s, I wasn't having so much fun. And then I kind of turned it around by the end of the 80s, where I was doing a little bit better by the close of the decade, but still wasn't having nearly the same kind of fun that I was having as a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or really a 12-year-old. I'd extended out to 12. Anyway, I was alive in the 1980s, and I was very pop culture aware, as those of you who follow me probably know. And I think that what a lot of people don't understand about the 80s today, people who weren't there or who were maybe just there but barely cognizant, and who now have this appreciation of 80s pop culture, heavy metal bands, power ballads, other manifestations of pop culture, synth pop, etc. And I like a lot of manifestations of 80s culture, don't get me wrong, 80s pop culture, especially that which came closer to the start of the decade. Okay, I'm a big new wave person, big into early Duran Duran and that era of music, that style of music, Flock of Seagulls, Gary Newman, and all that ilk. But in any case, for a lot of the things about the 80s that are really kind of embarrassing now to look back on, and that people appreciate in an ironic way, and I can appreciate more in an ironic way, and I can look back on fondly, even though, frankly, when all this stuff was happening, when it was contemporaneous, I wasn't having that great a time. We're talking about the mid-80s now, 85, 86, 87, and specifically with respect to, let's say, the power ballad, okay, and heavy metal, 80s hair metal in general. A lot of people have an appreciation for this kind of music and this kind of style, and their appreciation is couched in a love of irony. That is to say, they love this stuff, and they love it. You know, their love is sincere. It's heartfelt, but it's also ironical. They're aware of the tackiness of it. They're aware that it's, you know, by today's standards, it looks stupid, it looks outrageous, it looks silly, but they love it just the same. The same reason that people love a lot of 70s pop culture stuff too. But I think, and I'm not going to speak so much to the 70s stuff, you know, the disco era kind of stuff. But let's stick with the 80s for now, because that was a time when I was cognizant, I was a sullen teenager, I was an alienated young man who didn't fit in, who didn't belong anywhere. And now I'm an alienated old man who doesn't fit in and doesn't belong anywhere. So progress, right? The progress of time. But anyway, I think that what the way that people view this stuff now, like for instance, they hear, you know, this just came on over the speakers when I was in McDonald's getting my sweet tea, actually unsweet tea, a few minutes ago. And that's what triggered this thought in my head. So I said before I didn't know what triggered it. This is what triggered it. So they were playing some 80s songs over the radio, or over the speakers. And the song by Chicago came on, which I hated at the time. I still hate now. What was it? Can't think of the title. But your love is plain to see. So in love when we're together. And I know that I need you here with me. From tonight until the end of time. You in my mind, in my soul. You're the reason in my life. You're the inspiration. You're the inspiration. Sorry you had to hear that, but I had to just run it through in my head to alight upon the title. So, and this was a paradigmatic power ballad of the era. It was by Chicago, which wasn't a heavy metal band, but they were, you know, supposed to be a legit rock band. They'd been around for a while. They had cred. But this was just a wuss. The power ballad is a wussy song. Done, you know, it's a romantic song. It's bullshit, you know. But it's done up in this way that's supposed to be all sincere, and the ladies love it, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, today I listen to that song and I'm not filled with revulsion, because I can appreciate it in an ironic way. I can appreciate it as representing a period of time, you know, a style of music, the general culture. And yes, it's mixed up in the nostalgia thing, which, by the way, I republished my article on nostalgia at affirmativeright.blogspot.com if you want to check it out. This kind of ties in with that whole theme a little bit. But so people listen to songs like that, or other kinds of power ballads, you know, some that are the entire power ballad genre. I mean, I cannot, there are a lot of things that I didn't appreciate as a kid in the 80s that I can appreciate now. You know, because when you're a kid, you're more, when you're a teenager, you're more closed-minded. You have a certain sense of what you're into, what's your thing, and what's not your thing. The things that are not your thing, you really despise. And, you know, you get older, you get a little bit more, you know, tolerant, more open to appreciating things that are just not necessarily in your, you know, in your ballpark. That they can still be good, they can still have good things about them, things that can be appreciated. But the power ballad genre, no, nothing to appreciate about it. It's crap. I can appreciate, you know, honest to God heavy metal songs that are actually heavy. The crunching guitar and all of that, I can appreciate that more now than I could in the 80s, when it signified to me, again, something that I was not. You know, a style of music that represented a style of life, or a way of looking at life that I was not, that I saw myself as being the opposite of. Now I can listen to it and think, yeah, that's good, that's catchy. You know, it's It's got a certain brio to it, let's say. But power ballad songs, no. Crap. Crap, 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 crap. Everything, every single one of them is crap. There might be an exception, but I can't think of one right now. Everything from Bon Jovi's Never Say Goodbye to Poison's Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone, and all the rest, and including the Chicago song. Almost Paradise by Mike Reno from I'm slipping my mind right now, the Canadian band, you know, the Canadian hard rock band. He did this duet, Almost Paradise, and it's crap too. I can't remember who he did the duet with. It wasn't Amy Grant, because Amy Grant did some duet with a guy from Chicago, which was also a power ballad, which was also crap. I'm singularly hostile to the power ballad genre. Aesthetically hostile, philosophically hostile, hostile in every way. And I think what people don't understand, but I mean, my hostility is tempered by the fact that, you know, I'm allowed to see these things ironically now. And a lot of what we see about the 80s is filtered through the irony of, oh, isn't this tacky? Weren't they tacky? You know, look at the look at the clothes they're wearing, look at their poofy hairdos. Isn't it stupid? But at the same time, isn't it lovable, and isn't there something innocent about it? And boy, wouldn't it be great to go back in time and live in that era again? And you know, that's the typical nostalgia thing. But in the 80s, you weren't allowed. No, it's not that you weren't allowed. You were in. It wasn't. There was not really a cultural mechanism by which you could listen to a power ballad and appreciate it ironically. I mean, I guess it was possible to do, just like you can work out anything in your mind and figure out a way to do it. But if you were going to do it, you had to do it totally independently, because there were no outlets out there saying, oh, here's this great power ballad by Def Leppard. Boy, isn't it cheesy? But don't you love it because it's so cheesy? No, it wasn't like that. It was like, here's a great song on the radio. Here's a great song by Chicago. Hard for me to say I'm sorry, but it's hard for me to say I'm sorry is a different power ballad than the one I was singing a few minutes ago. The one that made me reflect on all of this. But in any case, it was just like, here's a great song. Ooh, they're so great. Ooh, look at this heavy metal band playing a power ballad. Aren't they great? Oh, it's so romantic. The ladies love it. It's so romantic. But it's also powerful. Power. And unironic, okay? When I was doing it just now, that was shticky, right? That was shtick. But you have to understand, at the time, contemporaneous to these songs being released, it was not ironic in any way. It was just like, here it is, like it. It's successful. It's on the radio. Your friends love it. You know, kids love it. What's wrong with you? You don't like this? You think you're better than this? Weirdo. I mean, and that was it. That was that was what you were left with. Essentially, there was no ready cultural mechanism to take this bad, cheesy stuff in and appreciate it ironically. And therefore, that set things up so that you had to either be a normal kid and like it, or you had to be like me, be an alienated kid and hate it, loathe it, despise it. You know, want to blow it up, want to destroy it, because, you know, you just hate it, because it's awful, because it sucks. And So somehow the whole capacity to be ironic about it came later. It came, I would say, well into the 90s. I mean, right around the era of Boogie Nights. I was watching Boogie Nights a couple weeks ago. Great movie. Still great. Still as great as I remember it being at the time. And that was really, I think, one of the first movies that had that kind of vibe about it, where you were looking at, it was mostly the 70s, but it also went into the 80s. And, you know, where you could look at these things and, you know, say, yes, this is cheesy, yes, this is awful, yes, this is crap, but there's still something salvageable about it. There's something wonderful about it, you know, and you can appreciate it with a twinkle in your eye. There can be a kindness to irony, to viewing things ironically. That's what I don't know if that's so much understood by people who are anti-irony. They think that ironical people are just always scoffing. But irony can be a very kind gesture. You can look on something ironically, and that gives you more tolerance for it. That helps you to see, to have affection for it in a way that you could not have affection for it without irony. That is something that I don't think often gets recognized. And that was something that when I saw Boogie Nights, and there's that scene where the guy is, the drugged out guy is listening to Sister Christian. Okay, Sister Christian by Night Ranger, that's an okay power ballad. It's crap, but this scene in Boogie Nights helped me to appreciate the chorus, because it was a rousing kind of chorus that song has. And it had, so you see this cokehead going on, like in his bathrobe, saying, "Here comes, dun, dun." I love this part, dun 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 dun. It's true, yeah, motoring. And sorry to subject you to that again, but you know, I'm living it as I'm saying it. So anyway, that's it was through irony that we were able to appreciate these things about the 80s and about other things in the past in general. But irony wasn't ready-made. It wasn't contemporaneous. If you were living in 1985, you couldn't be ironical with your musical taste. You could, but it was hard. It was very hard to be that, because there was no cultural outlet that gave rise to that kind of perspective that I know of. I mean, it was certainly not as nearly as prevalent as it is today. Whereas today it's possible to be, maybe there's too much irony. Irony is in, we could stand to siphon irony a bit more. It's in too great an abundance. So even contemporary songs, pop songs or movies or whatever, that are bad, that are cheesy, can be more appreciated ironically now. But in the 80s, okay, you had some, I don't know, some cheesy horror movie, like the Friday the 13th series or something like that. There was no way to appreciate it ironically. It was either like, ooh, that's such a great movie, it's so scary. Or, you know, man, that song rocks. You know, that's that power ballad by Poison, it just rocks. Okay, so there wasn't enough irony applied to pop culture at the time. It just wasn't there, but now there's too much of it. So, I don't know, just a few observations for whatever it's worth. Hopefully somebody got something out of all of this. And it was worth the near 20 minutes of me recording my thoughts. And I know I don't speak fast enough. I'm aware of that. If you want to speed up if there's a way to listen to me in a sped up fashion, I encourage you to do that. If you find what I have to say interesting but think I take too long to say it, then I understand and sympathize. But this is how I talk. I'm one of the Bob and Ray's Slow Talkers of America. If you don't get that reference, I encourage you to look it up. So, just a few thoughts about irony. Andy Nowicki, altrightnovelist.com.